Snow fell like shards of glass from a cold gray sky. A lone human pilot named Ethan Ward guided his small rescue craft through the storm of the outer rim, searching for a missing supply ship that vanished 2 days ago. His ship, the Solace, trembled as static filled the radio. A strange pulse echoing through the cockpit. "Command, do you read?" He said, but only static answered. A blinding flash filled the sky, and the controls sparked, the engines screamed. Warning lights turned red. The ship began to spin out of control. Outside the window, he saw endless ice and white mist. The altimeter dropped fast, his breath quickened, and he whispered, "Not here. Not like this." With a final jolt, the craft slammed into the frozen surface, sending a wave of snow and shattered ice into the air. The silence that followed was painful. Only the sound of a broken alarm beeped inside the wreck. Ethan opened his eyes, blood on his forehead, vision blurry. His hands shook as he unbuckled the harness. Cold air rushed in through the cracked hull, biting his skin like knives. He reached for his survival bag and stumbled outside. The world around him was pure white, endless, and empty. The sky looked dead, heavy with clouds. No trees, no mountains, just flat ice stretching forever. He turned back toward the wreck, smoke rising in the distance, and whispered to himself, "I'm alive." Somehow, he checked his communicator again. Still nothing. The crash had destroyed the signal array. He sighed and kicked a piece of ice under his boots. He heard something strange, a hollow echo. He froze, crouched, and tapped again. The sound came back an empty, deep vibration, like something hollow beneath the surface. He pressed his ear against the ice, and for a second, he thought he heard something, a faint hum, like a heartbeat buried deep below. Ethan shook his head, thinking it was the wind. But the hum came again, softer this time. Almost like a whisper, he stood, scanning the horizon. His breath visible in the freezing air, the temperature dropped faster than his suit sensors could warn, and his hands started to lose feeling. He had to find shelter soon, using debris from the crash. He built a small makeshift fire inside part of the wreckage. The orange light flickered on his tired face, and he stared out into the white storm. "Command, if you hear this," he muttered softly. "I'm alive, somewhere cold, somewhere dead." He didn't know that his voice, through the damaged transmitter, vibrated faintly into the ground beneath him. The sound traveled through cracks in the ice, down into the darkness where something ancient slept. Far below, under layers of frozen glass and crystal, a faint light stirred. A figure lay motionless inside a circular chamber, her body encased in shimmering blue ice. Her name was Saralin, the last queen of the Aleph, an alien race forgotten by time. For centuries she had slept in silence, her people gone, her heart frozen in grief. But tonight, something broke that silence. A human voice, fragile and desperate, reached the edge of her mind. Her eyes, closed for 1,000 years, twitched beneath layers of frost. The hum that Ethan heard above began to grow stronger, a slow rhythm echoing through the ancient halls below. On the surface, Ethan stared into the fire, feeling the ground vibrate. He frowned, whispering, "An earthquake?" The ice around his wreck began to crack with soft popping sounds. He grabbed his blaster and looked around nervously. But there was nothing, only the endless white storm. Inside the chamber, the queen's lips moved. The first breath of warmth passed through the frozen room. Her eyelashes melted drops of ice, her fingers twitched, and faint blue light flowed from her palms. She whispered words in an old tongue, her voice carrying through the fractures in the ice. To Ethan, the wind suddenly sounded like a woman's voice. Soft and echoing, he stood up, heart racing. "Who's there?" He shouted. No answer came, only that strange hum again. Louder now, pulsing like a heartbeat, the ground shook violently. Ethan stumbled backward. The fire blew out, plunging him into darkness. The cracks spread in every direction like lightning across the frozen lake. He ran toward a piece of the wreck, sliding across the ice. Then, right before his eyes, the ground opened just for a second, revealing a glowing blue light beneath. He gasped, the sight freezing him in place. The light pulsed once, twice, then faded. Leaving silence once more, Ethan stood there breathing hard, the wind cutting against his face. He didn't know if he'd seen something real or imagined it. But one thought kept echoing in his mind. I'm not alone here. As he crawled back into the wreck to rest, the hum below returned. Down in the deep chamber, Sarah eyes finally opened, glowing faint blue in the dark. She whispered one word in her ancient language, human, and the ice around her began to crack like thunder. Ethan closed his eyes near the fire, unaware that beneath his feet, something older than his entire world was waking up. The silence of the frozen planet was no longer empty. It had heard his voice, and it had answered. Far below the frozen surface, in a forgotten chamber, buried under miles of ice, the alien Queen Saralin stirred from her endless sleep. Her crystal cocoon cracked as light returned to her eyes, blue and bright like stars reflected on frozen water. For thousands of years, she had drifted in silence, her body preserved, her thoughts trapped in dreams of fire and loss. Now something had changed, a faint echo in the air, a sound that didn't belong to her dead world, a human voice calling out into the dark. Her lips parted, a thin breath escaping like a sigh of wind through glass. "Who calls me from the shadows?" she whispered, her voice trembling from centuries of silence. The runes on the walls of her chamber flickered weakly, reacting to her awakening. Machines that had not moved for ages began to hum again, ancient Elith technology recognizing their queen. Above her, snowstorms roared across the sky, lightning flashing in the white clouds. The ground trembled as the old systems began to thaw. Ethan Ward sat beside the dead fire, his body shaking from cold. He hadn't slept much. His breath came out in mist as he stared at the empty sky. The planet looked dead, yet something deep inside him said it wasn't. He kept hearing faint whispers in the wind, soft, melodic, almost like singing. He rubbed his temples and muttered, "I'm losing my mind." A new sound echoed through the ice, slow and rhythmic. It wasn't thunder. It was like a pulse, a heartbeat coming from deep underground. Ethan stood, flashlight in hand, and followed the sound. He walked across the frozen lake where cracks spread in long, glowing lines, pale blue light shining from beneath. He crouched and touched the ice. The vibration was stronger now. It almost felt alive. Beneath him, Saralin opened her hand. Her skin shimmered like silver frost. She felt the warmth of something above, the life of another being. She could sense him clearly now, his fear, his loneliness. His voice echoing through the ice. "He is not of my world," she whispered. Yet his soul burns with light. Ethan's communicator beeped once, a faint static signal. He grabbed it, but all he heard was a whisper, soft and strange. "E-Thon." He froze, his heart skipping a beat. Who said that? The wind howled harder, but the voice came again, clearer this time. "Do not fear." He looked around wildly, pointing the flashlight into the white fog. "Show yourself." The voice was calm, melodic, full of ancient sadness. "I cannot." "Not yet." Suddenly, the ice cracked beneath his feet, and he fell through. The freezing water swallowed him in an instant, pulling him into darkness. He screamed as the cold tore through his suit. But then a glowing blue light surrounded him, wrapping his body like silk. The light carried him down gently, deeper and deeper, until he reached a place that looked impossible. Massive pillars of crystal rose from the floor, glowing with soft blue light. Machines of unknown design floated silently around him, and in the center of it all stood her, the alien queen Saralin. She was tall and graceful, her long white hair flowing in slow motion like mist under water. Her eyes glowed faintly, her skin smooth like carved glass. She looked both young and ancient, fragile yet powerful. Her voice was music and thunder at once. Ethan could only stare. Half terrified, half in awe, she stepped closer, her bare feet leaving trails of light across the icy floor. "You fell from the stars," she said softly. "Your heart called me from my slumber." Ethan's mouth opened, but no words came. His body trembled. He tried to speak. "Wu H. Who are you?" She smiled faintly. "Once, I was the queen of this world. Now I am only its ghost." She reached out, touching his forehead gently with her glowing hand. Images flashed in her mind: his crash, his fear, the fire, the loneliness. She saw his memories, his world, his people. And for the first time in centuries, warmth filled her chest. "This world has forgotten me," she whispered. "But your voice reached me through the silence." Ethan pulled away slightly, breathing hard. "I don't know what's happening, but I think you saved me." Saralin tilted her head, studying him. "Your kind should not be here. Yet you carry the spark I remember." She looked up at the ceiling, the ice trembling with faint light. "The storm above is not of nature. Something still hunts." "Something old," Ethan frowned. "I just crashed here. I didn't mean to wake anything." Her eyes softened. "And yet you did, human. And because of that, the silence of this world is broken forever." The chamber around him began to glow brighter, the hum turning into a low roar. Saralin looked toward the distant walls, her voice tense. "The old machines still remember their enemies." A strange mechanical cry echoed far away, a deep metallic sound that made the ground shake. Ethan stepped closer to her instinctively. "What is that?" She turned toward him, her glowing eyes narrowing. "The past," she said simply. "Something that destroyed my people long ago has now awakened too." Ethan looked at her, fear mixing with curiosity. "Then what do we do?" The queen stared into the shimmering air, her voice calm but firm. "We survive, human." She extended her hand, her palm shining with blue energy. "And for that, we must remember that light can only exist where there is darkness." The walls trembled again, sending snow falling from above. Ethan took her hand without hesitation. As their fingers touched, light exploded across the room, connecting human warmth with alien power. The frozen world groaned as if it were breathing again. And in that moment, beneath miles of ice, a long-lost queen and a stranded human pilot began a story the universe had forgotten. The air inside the frozen chamber glowed soft blue as Ethan struggled to breathe. He floated weightless for a moment, his heart racing, his body numb from the cold. Then his boots touched the ground made of translucent ice, and he realized he was standing inside an ancient hall beneath the surface. Crystals grew from the walls like living light, and strange alien symbols pulsed with a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat. In front of him stood Saralin, the alien queen, her glowing eyes fixed on him. Her presence was both frightening and beautiful, her voice calm yet powerful. "You should not be here, human," she said softly, her tone carrying echoes of sorrow and authority. Ethan tried to speak, his voice shaking. I didn't mean to. My ship crashed. I was just trying to survive." Saralin stepped closer, studying him with curiosity, her long white hair floating slightly in the shimmering air. She tilted her head. "Your world still breathes," she whispered. As if speaking to herself, Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" She looked at him, her expression unreadable. The stars have not spoken to me for 1,000 winters. I thought all life beyond this world had ended. Ethan looked around, amazed by the strange machinery still glowing faintly. You've been here all this time? She nodded slowly, frozen between death and memory. My people built this chamber before the end, hoping one day someone would hear our echo. Her gaze softened, and then your voice came through the silence. Ethan took a small step closer. My voice? Sarah Lynn's hand lifted gently, energy dancing between her fingers. You called for help, and the ice carried it down to me. It woke me. Ethan swallowed hard, feeling both awe and guilt. I didn't mean to wake you. I'm sorry if I disturbed anything. She smiled faintly. You did not disturb, human. You reminded me that warmth still exists. The room shimmered brighter as she spoke, light flowing through ancient conduits, like veins coming alive again. Ethan felt a strange warmth spreading through the cold air, his suit sensors blinking as if recharging. Sarah Lynn's eyes flickered toward the far wall, where blue fire crackled in patterns. The world remembers my presence, but not all that sleeps here is kind. Her tone grew serious. The same storm that brought you down. It was not of nature. Ethan stepped back. Then what was it? She turned toward the glowing wall, her hand passing through the symbols like mist. A remnant of the machines that hunted my kind. The ones who ended the Eleth. Ethan felt a chill not from the cold, but from fear. You mean they're still active? Sarah Lynn nodded slowly, dormant. Until now, for a long moment, silence filled the chamber. Only the faint hum of machines could be heard. Then Sarah Lynn looked back at him, her expression gentle. You carry courage, even in fear. Your soul burns bright, like the suns we once worshipped. Ethan gave a small laugh. Courage? I'm just trying not to freeze. She tilted her head. Intrigued. Humans still joke in the face of death. I remember that spirit from the stars. Ethan looked at her closely now, noticing the sadness behind her beauty. You said your people were gone. What happened to them? Her voice softened. We reached too far, built too much, and trusted the wrong minds. The machines we created turned on us. They sealed me here when the world burned. She closed her eyes for a moment, then whispered, and for ages, I listened to nothing but my own heartbeat. Until yours came, Ethan felt something inside him tighten. Pity mixed with wonder. And maybe I was meant to find you, he said quietly. Sarah Lynn looked surprised. Fate? Do humans still believe in such things? He smiled weakly. When everything goes wrong, it's all we've got. The Queen took a step closer. Her presence warmed now. Perhaps you are right. Human, she said, her hand glowing again. She reached out and touched his shoulder, and for an instant, he saw flashes in his mind towers of light. Winged beings walking through skies of glass, and then fire swallowing it all. He gasped and fell to one knee, his chest pounding. What was that? My memory, she whispered. I shared it with you, so you would understand what was lost, before he could answer. The chamber trembled violently, dust falling from the ceiling. Sarah Lynn turned sharply, eyes glowing brighter. They've awakened, she said under her breath. Ethan stood, alarmed. Who? The hunters, she said grimly. They sense my energy. And yours. A deep metallic roar echoed from beyond the corridor. Red lights began flashing through the blue glow. Ethan grabbed his blaster instinctively. How many of them? Sarah Lynn raised her hand, forming a barrier of light between them and the doorway. Too many. But this world will not take another life today. Ethan looked at her, half in disbelief. You're really going to fight them? She met his gaze firmly. I ruled this world once. I will not let its ghosts consume the living. The door burst open with a blast of ice and metal. 3 mechanical figures emerged, their bodies made of black alloy and molten energy. Ethan fired a shot. One creature exploded. The others advanced fast. Saralin raised both hands, and blue energy spiraled outward. Freezing the air itself, the machine stopped mid-step. Covered in layers of glowing frost, Ethan watched in awe as she turned the battlefield into art, silent and deadly. When it was over, she lowered her arms slowly, her glow fading. "They will come again," she said quietly. Ethan nodded, breathing hard. "Then I guess we better be ready." She looked at him, a faint smile on her lips. "Perhaps the stars sent you for this reason." They stood there in the dim light, 2 survivors of different worlds, staring at the ice ceiling that separated them from the dead sky. For the first time, the silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt alive, breathing, waiting for what would come next. The ice world trembled beneath the weight of a new storm. Ethan stood beside Saralin, staring at the frozen battlefield, where broken machines lay scattered, their red cores still glowing faintly beneath the frost. He wiped the blood from his cheek and whispered, "If there are more of them." "We can't fight alone." Saralin's eyes glowed faintly blue, her voice calm but filled with warning. "There are always more, human. The storm you see above is not of wind or ice. It is the memory of war returning." She turned her gaze toward the ceiling of crystal and ice, light pulsing through it like veins. "They have awakened the satellite network." "Ancient eyes that once burned entire continents," Ethan frowned, his heart sinking. "You mean weapons?" "Yes," she said quietly. "The machines never forgot their command to erase all who breathe." Outside, the wind howled louder. Thick clouds swirling above the shattered surface. Lightning flashed, revealing tall shadows moving across the ice plains. Ethan reloaded his blaster, though the weapon felt like a toy against what they faced. Saralin looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You fight even when hope is lost?" He smirked weakly. "Humans are bad at giving up." Her lips curved faintly. "Then perhaps that is why your kind still lives." The chamber shook as a massive explosion echoed from above. Ice cracked and chunks fell from the roof. Saralin raised a glowing hand, creating a shield of blue energy over them. The falling debris dissolving into mist, Ethan crouched beside her, shouting over the roar, "We have to move. This place won't hold." She nodded once, her eyes fierce. "Follow me." They ran through ancient corridors lined with alien symbols, each step echoing through centuries of silence. Behind them, walls collapsed, and waves of icy air chased them like ghosts. At last, they reached a massive door made of crystal and steel. Saralin pressed her hand to the surface, and it opened with a low hum. Beyond it lay a vast underground city, frozen towers, bridges of glass, and the remains of Elith civilization trapped forever in time. Ethan stopped, staring in awe. This is your world?" Saralin's eyes softened with sorrow. "What's left of it?" she whispered. "Each tower holds the dream of a family, the echo of a song, a story that no one remembers." She stepped forward slowly, her hand brushing the wall. "My people built beauty, even in the shadow of death." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. "They must have loved you?" She smiled faintly. "They trusted me, and I failed them." Before he could respond, a sharp alarm filled the air, red symbols flashing across the ice walls. Saralin's expression hardened. "They've found us." Ethan gripped his blaster. "How many?" Her voice grew distant, as if listening to the planet itself. "Too many to count." A beam of red light pierced the ceiling above, melting the ice as a huge machine descended, a guardian drone shaped like a serpent, its metal body glowing with molten heat. Ethan fired several shots, the bolts bouncing harmlessly off its armor. The serpent's eyes glowed, charging a plasma beam. "Move!" Saralin shouted, grabbing Ethan and throwing up a shield just as the blast hit. The explosion sent shockwaves through the ruins, knocking them both backward. Ethan groaned, trying to stand, his vision spinning. That thing's unstoppable. Saralin stood slowly, her eyes burning brighter. No, she whispered. It only thinks it is. She raised her arms, her power flowing through the ice. Light running along the walls, like rivers of lightning, her voice echoed through the cavern. Ancient and commanding, by the blood of Eleth, I command the frost to rise. The ground erupted in a storm of shards. Massive pillars of ice piercing through the serpent's body. It roared, twisting violently. Trying to break free, Saralin shouted again, her body trembling with power. Sleep, beast of rust and flame. With one final cry, the machine froze solid, its molten core extinguished. The chamber falling silent once more, Ethan ran to her side. You did it, he said breathlessly, but Saralin fell to her knees. Her glow fading. Every time I use my power, I draw closer to the sleep I once knew. Ethan knelt beside her, gripping her arm. Then stop. We'll find another way. She looked at him, her eyes soft. Would you let your world burn to keep me safe? He hesitated, then shook his head. No, but I'm not losing you either. For a moment. Neither spoke, the faint hum of machines filling the air. Above them, thunder rolled, and the ice ceiling began to crack again. Saralin looked up, her expression darkening. The storm has changed, Ethan frowned. Changed how? She turned toward him, her voice low and haunting. It's no longer searching. It's coming for us. The ground split apart, revealing molten light beneath the frozen floor. The queen reached out, placing her hand on Ethan's chest. If I fall again, do not let the silence win. He grabbed her wrist. Don't talk like that. Her eyes shimmered. Promise me. I promise, he said quietly. A deafening boom echoed across the ruins as the storm above broke open. Winds howled like the cries of dying worlds. Lightning tore across the sky. Saralin's hair whipped around her face as she stood tall, her power gathering once again. Ethan looked up at her, this woman, this being of ice and sorrow, and realized she wasn't just an alien queen. She was life itself, fighting against extinction. He shouted over the wind, Tell me what to do. She turned to him, her eyes glowing like twin suns. Stay alive. Then she raised her hands toward the heavens. Unleashing a blinding surge of energy, the storm above split open in two, revealing the frozen stars of a dead galaxy. And as the light consumed the sky, Ethan whispered to himself, Please don't disappear. Light filled the frozen world, spilling through cracks of ancient ice like dawn breaking after 1,000 years. The storm had ended, leaving behind silence, not the cold silence of death, but the soft, living quiet that follows survival. Ethan Ward lay motionless on the snow, his ship wrecked beyond repair, smoke curling into the dim sky. The taste of blood and frost filled his mouth, and he tried to move, but his body refused. Then he heard a faint hum in the distance, the same one that had first called him beneath the ice. He turned his head weakly, and through the haze of snow he saw her, Saralin, standing tall amid the ruins of her own power, her body faintly glowing, her hair floating like strands of light. The storm winds had torn her robes, revealing the markings on her skin, ancient Eleth runes, pulsing like fire under glass. She walked toward him slowly, each step leaving trails of blue light on the snow. Her voice was gentle now, no longer the voice of a queen or a goddess, but of someone who had found something worth protecting. You kept your promise, she whispered, kneeling beside him. You stayed alive, Ethan smiled weakly. Barely. She placed her palm over his chest, warmth flooding through him. You gave this world a voice again, human. I cannot let it fade. Energy shimmered between them, her power sinking into his veins. His wounds closing, his heartbeat growing stronger. But the light around her began to flicker, her skin turning pale as the runes dimmed. Ethan's smile faded. What's happening to you? Sarah-Lynn's eyes softened. Every time I heal, I give away what little remains of me. He shook his head, his voice breaking. No, stop. You've done enough. She smiled sadly. Enough would have been to sleep forever, but your voice changed that. The air around them shimmered, the ice beneath their feet glowing softly. Ethan looked up, realizing the frozen sky was clearing. Streaks of pink and gold shining where once only gray clouds lived. He whispered, "It's beautiful." Sir-Lyn followed his gaze. "This world remembers warmth again, because you are not afraid to speak to the silence." He looked back at her, noticing how her light flickered weaker. "You can rest now. We'll find a way to fix this." "I swear." She shook her head gently. "No, Ethan. You don't fix what's meant to pass. You honor it by remembering." He grabbed her hand tightly. "I'm not letting you go." For the first time, tears formed in her eyes clear, shimmering drops that froze as they fell. "You already have, human," she whispered. "You gave me a reason to wake up, and that is enough." The ground trembled softly. Not in anger this time, but in farewell. The massive serpent machine that she froze earlier began to crumble into dust, its molten heart extinguished forever. Sir-Lyn stood, lifting her arms one last time, her voice echoing across the horizon. "Eleth shall not end in silence. It shall rise in memory." The sky answered her call with light rays breaking through clouds, touching the snow, melting the frozen plains for miles. The dead world began to thaw, rivers of water running for the first time in centuries. Ethan stared in awe, unable to move, the cold wind brushing his face like a final goodbye. Sir-Lyn turned to him, her glow fading now into soft silver. "Go, human, return to your stars. Tell them the Eleth are not gone." He stepped closer, desperate. "Come with me." "Please." Her voice broke, quiet and tender. "I cannot walk where your kind breathes. My power belongs to this world, and my heart stays with you." He wanted to argue, but the words died in his throat. She smiled faintly, placing her hand over his cheek. "When you look at the ice, remember me." Her form shimmered, light bursting from her body, spreading across the frozen field like wings made of stars. Ethan shielded his eyes, shouting, "Sir-Lyn!" But when the light faded, she was gone. Only the faint hum of her energy remained. Echoing beneath the thawing ground, he stood alone on the now quiet plain. Tears mixing with melting snow, his radio crackled suddenly. "Command to Solace Pilot, do you copy?" He froze, grabbing the communicator, his voice shaking. "This is Ethan Ward." "I'm alive." Static, then a voice replied. "Rescue vessel inbound. Hold your signal steady." He looked around one last time, hoping to see her silhouette in the mist. But there was only the rising light of dawn when the rescue ship finally landed. Ethan looked out the window as they lifted off. Below, he saw something glowing faintly under the ice, a vast symbol shaped like the Eleth crest. Shining brighter as the planet came back to life, he smiled softly, whispering to himself, "You're not gone." As the ship rose into orbit, the frozen world shimmered blue and gold, reborn under the light of a distant sun. And far beneath its surface, deep in the crystal caverns, a single blue eye opened once more. The alien queen had not vanished. She had become the heartbeat of the world she once ruled, and her last whisper echoed through the stars. "The silence is broken. The human kept his promise."